Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning live to a new segment to our YouTube channel called Life After the Whistle. And as you can see here, Life After the Whistle is a segment that we want to kind of talk about and kind of just talk about life after sports, life after you done played a great career, you had a ending injury, whatever it may be, but life in general after sports. What does that look like? Uh, how can you move forward from a season-ending injury? How can you move forward from playing a sport or even coaching the sport or being engaged in the sport industry and kind of just talk about what life looks like outside of sports, and that's kind of what this segment is going to be about, is what does your life look like when you're not playing a sport, when you're not coaching a sport, when you're not interacting or engaging in a sport. Huge shout out to everybody that's in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. Again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. That means a lot. And so when I look at what life looks like outside of the whistle, after the whistle. For me, I've played soccer in high school. I've played basketball. I've played football. I've played volleyball. In college, I was a part of the volleyball team, and I did a lot of good things in my career as an athlete. But you sustain injuries, you just grow old, and your body just can't take the pain no more of playing, so much sports or playing a game that you once loved. And so when we look at what my life looks like outside of playing that sport, I'm, had the opportunity to coach, own a semi-pro men's, women's, and youth basketball team. And so I'm doing something that's going to impact the community, that's going to be beneficial to the community. And so my life looks a little bit different because I'm still a part of the sports industry, and I'm still able to support the sports business and the sports industry. And so I have a sports business mindset, and the route that I'm going, I might be in this industry until I pass away or pass the reins down to the next in line in my family or someone else that I might sell a team to, or the organization as a whole. But for people, when we look at athletes, we look at coaches, we look at owners, and we look at front office staff. We have someone that we look up to. We have that person that we consider a mentor, someone that can guide us through our careers as we progress and grow. Some basketball players, football players, some athletes in general, they go on to become commentators, they go on to become coaches, and they go on to become analysts and different things like that. But they still look at their life after that whistle. And so for me, I have mentors. I have people that always have my back. But I look at the fact of the matter is that when we see how people lead, how people grow and progress, it can be challenging for some people because all they know is playing that game. They never really thought about what life would be like after the whistle. And so um, I just look at I look up to a lot of people, and one of those people that I've looked up to a lot, um, even even though that character, that person may be a fictional character or whatever, but if anyone ever watched like Chicago Fire, right, and Chief Bolden, and how he's always leading by example, he always has his team's back, and he's always the first to run into the fire and kind of assess the situation and make those tough decisions. And now that's kind of in the position that I'm in as the owner of a sports industry, a sports enterprise. I have to kind of lead by example. I have to set the tone. I have to assess the entire situation and do a business decision based off of the bigger picture and what's going to make best sense for the industry. Now, if you're an athlete that becomes a coach, you have to do what's best for your players that's on the court at that time. You have to look at how much you're winning by, how much you're losing by, who can you put in the game, and it's going to be successful at that point in time. When you look at as an analyst, right? How are you commentating the game? How are you giving the information without being biased, without, putting out the wrong kind of information? And so there's a lot that you have to look at when you talk about life outside of the whistle, life after the whistle. It's never easy. And I can tell you that much. Playing a sport, all your life, playing sports in general, all your life, it's never easy to jump from playing a sport, a game that you love, that you sacrifice your time and your body to play that game, and then you transition into a career that is not really in the sports, like playing the game at all, right? You commentating, you're coaching, you are an analyst, you're a scout, you just like a reporter in general on the sideline, and you look at that and say, man, like I remember when I used to do this, and people start comparing the next generation of athletes to you. Prime example, like Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, like they're analysts, they're reporters on the sideline, and they get to talk to these different athletes that are playing. And next up, you're going to see like LeBron James and Steph Curry that are going to leave the sport that they've sacrificed their body their entire life for, to go do something else outside of the whistle here. And I find it interesting that we don't prepare ourselves for what our life will look like beyond sports. And one of the biggest things that I like to encourage my student athletes, even my athletes now, is that you need to go out and get your education. That's first and foremost. Grab that education. I can't stress that anymore, because if you go out and grab that education, if you get injured, you have something to fall back on. And the reason I say go grab that education is because you can get a bachelor's degree, you can go get a master's degree, a PhD, you can go to trade school, technical school, and get a certificate for a trade that's going to be beneficial for you. Because guess what? Injuries happen. And when we look at those injuries, it could be a season ending injury. Back when, and I started to really think about this back when Kevin Ware was playing basketball NCAA, and his bone snapped out of his leg. I think it was his femur, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the bones all like that, but it snapped from his leg. And then shortly, like a couple weeks after that, Paul George landed on the bottom of the court, at the bottom where the wheels is at, and his leg had snapped out or whatnot, and it was just disgusting to look at. But it was an injury that could have ended their season. It ended Kevin Ware's season, I believe, and wasn't the same. Paul George wasn't the same afterwards either. But huge shout out to everyone that's in the chat. I really appreciate you guys for coming in. If you guys are sports enthusiasts, shout out the sport that you played in the chat. Shout out, the things that you're doing with your sports career. I want to see what you guys are doing and what you guys are about. So again, thank you to everybody that's in the chat. Make sure you hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. But also, like I said, we look at careers, sports careers too, right? Because that sports career can be a team manager, it could be a video coach, player development coach, strength and conditioning coach, it can be a sports nutritionist, it could be a sports lawyer, it could be a scout, it could be a sport agent. It could be something along those lines, right? But how are you preparing yourself for that next step in life, that next career move? If you played any kind of sport in high school, college, and it just wasn't working out, what is your backup plan? It's pretty much is what I'm trying to say. I hope that everybody in the chat is doing good as well. I'm doing great. I'm living a good life, so I really appreciate you guys. But for me, I enjoy what I do. Like I said, I played soccer, basketball, volleyball, football. I played a little bit of baseball, but it was rec baseball. But like when you said enough is enough, and enough is enough, because I was the type of player, once I got to a certain limit, like my back start hurting, my knees start hurting, and I got to take my time, walking to my house or to my car, whatever it may be, and you get those aches and pains in your body, and you just know it's time to hang it up. Unfortunately, because of a lot of things that I've done as far as physical demand to my body, it really took a toll early in life on my body. So I knew early enough I had to give it quits early. And so now we look at it as, how can I impact the next generation? How can I give back to the young men that are part of my basketball team? How can I give back to the young women that are part of my basketball team? And how can I give back to the youth that are part of my basketball teams? And the other thing too is, how are you giving back into the community, right? Because even as, you know, we are giving back to the community, it's one of those things that make you feel very grateful, very important, to feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself. And what I mean by that is, like, community service projects, good deeds, different things like that. So for me, you know, one of the things that a lot of people do is give back to the homeless, listen to the homeless, sit there and kind of see what their story is, right? One of the biggest things that I'm big on is listening and hearing someone's story, because at the end of the day, everybody has a story. What is your story? How did you get to where you were at as a homeless person? How did you get here? What happened? What was that situation like? You could have been a five-star athlete in high school, and then something happened where you went to college, you hung out with the wrong crowd, you got hooked on drugs, you did something, and then boom, it affected your life in the long run. Another situation is, you could have, you could have been working. You didn't go to college or anything like that, but you could have been working. You got hurt on the job. And then what? You can't work no more because you hurt. Now you got to figure out how to provide for your family. You got to figure out how to do that. One of the biggest things that, as I was reading at one point that I was reading about, is, as a sport agent, because I was studying to be a sport agent for FIBA as well as the NBA and NFL. And the biggest thing is, how do you teach athletes when they get into the pros to manage their finances to the point where they have money put away in an investment account, money put away for that rainy day, money put away, to give back to the community, money to put away to kind of make sure that they can actually live their life, right? And spend their money wisely. It makes the most sense to think about life as, alrighty, like, yes, I made this money, but how can I respect that person and treat them to make them feel important? How can I respect this person by teaching them how to do something that's bigger and better than themselves, right? It don't matter how well you played on the court, how well you played on the field, on that baseball diamond, whatever it may be, right? But did you give 100% when you played that sport, no matter what? Did you give up? It's a lot of things, right? Because right now, the only thing that I know is sports. That is the only thing that I know is sports. I got my bachelor's degree in sport management. I'm about to graduate with my master's degree in sport management. And then soon I'll be applying for my PhD in sport management. So all I know is sports. I know the leadership side of sports. I know the physical side of sports. And I know, like military leadership and different things with the military, right? But outside of that, like, what else do I know? Can I fix a car by myself? Probably not, but I'll learn. I got to watch YouTube and I got to figure out how to take this part out, how to do this and how to do that. But do I know how to, repair a floor? Do I know how to put a floor in? Do I know how to do plumbing work? Do I know how to do electrical work? Do I know how to, do a blueprint of a house and build that house from scratch? No, I don't. But I got people that's around me that can teach me how to do a lot of that stuff. And to the point of Ron, is you got to use your money to make more money, to always have money, right? And so when I look at that comment in itself, it's like, he always teaches people, especially on Fridays, Financial Fridays. If you don't know already, go check him out on the OG Network, and he does his his financial freedom course on Friday mornings. And it's just interesting, is if you can invest your money into something and it makes you money, why not keep investing into that thing that's going to make you money, right? When you actually go into the community and you giving back to the community, don't that make you feel better than the person you actually are? I want to shout Ant like the bug out, because one of the biggest things that I can see him doing on his lives and different things like that is that he is constantly happy all the time on his lives. He's always encouraging someone to be better than themselves, but also, like, even while he's out there, a couple of times riding his bike, he was talking to people and different things like that, and just being, you know, open and having that high self-esteem and whatnot, right? And one of the biggest things that I do and I'm trying to do is build up the courage to be comfortable with talking to people that I really won't talk to on a day-to-day basis, right? Because if you are in a position, you never know that you go talk to that person, hey, like you got a second to talk, let me buy you a cup of coffee, $1 for a cup of coffee. You sit down and you have that coffee, and now look at that. You having a conversation with this man that you just met, and you felt like you need to talk to that person and say, hey, like, what's your story like? How you doing? I felt like I needed to talk to you because it was just on my mind, my heart to talk to you. And you talk to that person and they open up to you and say, man, I'm struggling. I don't know how I'm going to be able to get food in the house. I just lost my job, whatever it may be, right? But we don't prepare people for those situations to happen. And so when we look at these athletes that go to school to play sports and only focus on sports, we need to do a better job of preparing athletes outside of sports to live their life after the whistle. To, I mean, some people, I don't know to the severity, could have, some kind of PTSD. I'm like, man, I wake up in the morning, I got to go to the gym. I wake up after the gym, I got to go shoot around or whatever. And it's consistent with that routine. But at what point do you say enough is enough? I can't keep doing this. I need to let it go slowly and focus on building my family up, focus on giving back to the community, focus on, teaching people the next thing that they need to know, right? Because one of the biggest pro athletes that I look at to this day who does a great job with giving back to the community and pouring into the lives of others is Shaquille O'Neal, right? The one thing that I heard on a video from Shaq was his kids were telling people like, oh man, we rich, we rich, we rich, we got money. And then he was like, no, y'all not rich, I'm rich. I worked hard, I made this money, I did all this. And so he pretty much, like, he paid for his kids to go to school and to get through college, right? But then he's like, you got to pay this back. You're going to go work for it. You're going to go to school and I'm going to front you the money, but you're going to work and pay me back that money because that's my money. One of the things that I seen Shaq do was he went to Walmart and he's seen people in Walmart struggling to buy stuff for their family. He paid for that stuff for their family. He seen a lady who was putting a laptop on layaway, and he walked up to the register and was like, "Hey, how much do you have left to pay it off?" And he paid it off. And then he took the kids and said, "Hey, like, y'all want a bike?" And he said, "Yeah." And he took them back there to get their first bike or whatever it may be. But it's a humbling experience, right? You got to be humble. You got to be able to be, able to accept the fact that you are blessed, and you can recognize that you're blessed and give back to those of less fortunate. Shaq did another good thing where he had a signature shoe. But how much did his signature shoe actually cost? $15. Bro, you look at the cost of his shoe compared to the cost of like LeBron's, Iverson's, Jordan's, right? Extremely cheaper, but he made it affordable for people to afford a pair of shoes. And then the other thing about Shaq too is a high school football player was playing football games in sneakers because he couldn't find a size cleat that fit his foot. So not only did Shaq get a hold of this, but he got him football cleats to fit his foot. And then he got this kid some help from, I think it was Adidas or Under Armour, one of them, to size this young freshman's foot so he can get, his own cleat because he wore such a big shoe. I think he wore like a size 23 and he was only a freshman in high school. I was like, man, that's crazy, right? But even then too, right, is one of the things that I learned is thrift shopping, right? And it's funny that Ant put that in the chat too, because when you look at thrift shopping, you can go into the thrift store, Goodwill, whatever thrift store is local to you, and I guarantee you'll find some name brand stuff in there for 90% off. Like there could be some Nike stuff in there with the tag still on it, and guess what? I just paid $15 for it. When I go to the store, it's like $60. I got a good deal on it. You know, the same thing with sneakers. Oh, like people buy these shoes and they go to the thrift store and give them to the thrift store, and then they sell them for cheap, and then you pay for it that way, right? Because at the end of the day, what do you want to be known for? Right? You really have to ask yourself, what do you want to be known for? You have to really focus on the bigger picture. Like, do you want to be known for the man who got all this money and not give back to the community, or do you want to be known for the man that's pouring into someone's life and making sure like they're doing well even if you don't even have it, right? And I do this to a lot of people as well, and I'm guilty of it myself, is where I will help people out even though I know I might not have it 100%. So it really just makes a difference. What encouraging words do you have for Jaden Ivey? It appears he soon will need to deal with life after basketball. Corporate world is mean. And you know, that's a great point. If I'm not mistaken, he's a believer in Christ, and he was uh, released by the Chicago Bulls for standing his ground. And one of the things that really is sickening in this corporate world is that, you know, people don't want to hear about Jesus Christ and the truth, because in the Bible, the truth is laid out for us in the Bible. And we got to teach what is right from the Bible. Now, in the beginning, when God created man and women, he created man first, and then he created woman from that man's rib, right? So God didn't create man to marry man, right? Because that would be Adam and Steve. But God created Adam and Eve to marry and be united as one, not Adam and Steve, right? So why are we trying to support something that's going against what we believe in? I personally don't agree with trying to marry someone of the same sex. I personally don't agree with someone that will go against what I believe, which is the Bible, the word of Jesus Christ. Because in John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, right? And so we live by what God word has said, and what God word is telling us, right? Because God breathed this word into us, right? And so I live by what the Bible says. And I even look at John 14:6, where Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me, meaning that Jesus is the truth, and that Jesus is the truth, and his word is true, and it is good. I'm going to listen to his word, right? But what Jaden Ivey did was speak truth, and he stuck up for what he believed in. I find it very interesting, not to shed any light on something else, or to take any light away from different situations, but a lot of pro athletes step and use their platform for the wrong things. I 100% agree that they should have used their platform for police brutality. They did a great job with that. Equality for all. But at the end of the day, you know, do we need a full month to celebrate LGBTQ, XYZ, whatever it may be, right? I don't think we need a full month to celebrate anything that's going against what we believe in and what God's word says. Because again, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So, you know, it's just cruel that, you know, that happened to him. But if he was a smart man, and I pray that he was able to take his money that he made with that organization and put it away into investments, so that way he can start to recoup, you know, some money and have money for life after basketball, life after that whistle. And so again, I pray that he may even get a second opportunity at another team that could actually implement his beliefs and live the style that he lives in, right? Because even point in case, right, with the whole Colin Kaepernick sitting and kneeling for the national anthem, right? You know, it was a big thing with that. But at the end of the day, right, if you look at, and I hate to throw put the Steelers out there, because I'm not a Steelers fan and I dislike the Steelers very much, but that one player for the Steelers, he stood up with Kaepernick, but at the end of the day, he still stood for the national anthem. He said, I'm with you. He said, I'll take my knee, but as soon as that national anthem comes, I got to stand, because I was a veteran. I served in the military. So I'm going to stand for the national anthem. And that's exactly what he did. He stood for the national anthem. And then, he kind of went from there. So I respect him. I respect him. And even if he knew that he wasn't going to be kneeling for the national anthem with his team, he stood at that tunnel and he saluted that flag because he served his country proudly. Plato's Closet in different states and Habitats flea markets. Yes, Plato's Closet is good as well. I've been to a couple Plato's Closets and I've seen a lot of good things in there. I got an Eagles jersey from Plato's Closet, for like $5. Go Birds. But it was really cool to, go in there. But at times with Plato's Closet, though, it gets so busy in there. Like, I never seen so many people just shopping, in a thrift store and find so many good things. And then they have so many deals. Like, even with Plato's Closet, and then what's the other one for children? There's one for children that's always next to Plato's Closet, but they do the same thing where you get like these cheap bags of clothes and different things like that, and you can fill a bag for $1 or fill a bag for $5 or whatever it may be. But it's a children's version of Plato's Closet. I can't remember the name right now, but garage sales too. You find a lot of good stuff in garage sales, whether it's like what do you call it, like guitars or any of that good stuff that they just sell for cheaper prices or whatever it may be. Um, and apparently OG wants to be known for asking you every day for 14 cents. So we need to know if you took your walk today, because that means you found 14 cents on the ground, maybe even 25 cents on the ground. So, it's helpful, but just how you promote healthy exercise, right? Because if you promote the exercise and you go outside and you go walking, guess what? You'll find 14 cents on the ground. You find 25 cents on the ground. You might even find $1. You'll be lucky. I've seen some videos where people have been hiding like $50 bills, $100 bills inside of like different plants or whatever, and they post like, "Hey, I'm over here. Guess where I'm at?" And then put a $50 bill, $100 bill, $20 bill in the plants or the grass area for someone to find, just to bless them and kind of go from there. The other thing too is, right, it's not something big that's usually done all the time, but what is it? Where you go through like a drive-through, whether it's like a McDonald's or whatever it may be, and then you pay for that person's food that's behind you, right? And then you hope that when you pay for their food, that they do the same thing, and it just keeps, reciprocating to the next person until that person knows that he can't afford to pay for the person behind them, and go from there. So it works out very well sometimes. And you get a really good feeling when you do something good for people, and just know that like your hard work doesn't go unnoticed, pretty much. um Only veterans should get a full month of celebration. I agree, right? How many people is yeah. So like veterans, like you said, OG is they should get a full month of celebration. It's interesting how far like veterans get celebrated throughout the entire year, right? Because you got Veterans Day, you got Memorial Day, you got the 4th of July, different things like that, where you kind of like celebrate patriotism and different things like that. But yes, paying it forward is definitely a good way to kind of feel good about yourself, right? Because I remember I was a freshman in college and I didn't have no money. I was poor, broke. It was my first week on campus, and I was taken to like this frozen yogurt place. And then I said, "Man, this is good." And then right after, we went to McDonald's to grab something to eat, or vice versa. I think we went to McDonald's first and then went to get frozen yogurt. But I remember I was in that McDonald's line, and one of my high school football coaches that gave me some money for my books for college and said, "Here, we want to do this for you because you're doing something with your life," and it paid for my books. And so I was like, you know what? I had a little bit of money left over. Here's $20. Put it towards the person behind me and their bill or whatever. And it just made me feel good about myself. It made me feel like I was doing something and making a difference, right? And then as I joined the military and I started to go through different trainings and events with the military, and I come back to the real world, and I see that not everybody thinks how I think. And so it's like people are showing up late to class. Yeah, why are you showing up late to class? And then you asking a million and one questions like, what are we doing? Why is this going on? Why is that happening? Right? It doesn't make sense. And I'm guilty of calling multiple people out. They said, well, what are we doing? I haven't been here for the last 6 weeks. Well, if you came to class, you would know what we're doing. Right? So don't put it on us to catch you up when you weren't doing something right by not showing up to class for the last 6 classes or 6 weeks or whatever it may be, right? It didn't seem fair to us. And so I called them out about it in front of everyone. Probably shouldn't have done that, but the teacher pulled me aside afterwards and was like, I really appreciate what you did. You really stood up for what was right. And that's a lot of things too that athletes need to learn is you need to stand up for what is right. What Jaden Ivey did was he stood up for what is right. What some people do, they stand up for what is right. And you got to look at it is what is right? What is right to you? What do you believe in that's going to set you apart from everyone else? What do you believe in that's going to set you apart from everyone else? How can you take what you know and pass it on to someone else? I can tell you now, I got people like Ant Like the Bug, people like OG that I can call any single day. People like Out the Pit and I say, yo, I got this problem going on. I need some advice. Or, hey, this is what we're trying to do with the dogs. What are your thoughts on this? Hey, I want to do this community service event. What are your thoughts on this? And they say, what do you call it? They say, like, listen, like, I like it. I'm going to support you no matter what. If you need help, let me know. We'll share it, and that's what they do is they share everything for me to help me be set apart. So that way the information can get out there. Right. And, with the basketball team, with Delaware Dogs basketball team, we're on the verge of doing a lot of good community service events coming up to support our community in Wilmington, Delaware, and whatnot. And I'm very excited to see what life is about to be like outside of basketball, giving back into the community and really just seeing how people are going to receive Dogs basketball in the community, right? And this is just, like I said, this is me living my life outside of sports, me taking my sports enterprise and giving back to the community. We just got approved by the state to have a 501c3, and we filed our last paperwork that we need to file. Everything was paid for, and now we just wait for the IRS to approve the actual 501c3 to add to our actual foundation so we can give back to the youth. The biggest thing that we want to do with our 501c3 is we want to take student athletes from high school who want to go to college and give them a scholarship. It may not be a lot. It could be a $500 scholarship, but it's something. And, we want to take those who are less fortunate and give them a scholarship to go to college or a trade or technical school to allow them to do something with their life. And that's what we're trying to do is set a difference and be the difference that we want to see in our community, right? I said this before talking to someone else, but many people might hate this person, Michael Jackson. He said it best in one of his songs, "A Man in a Mirror," right? If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make that change. So how are you going to make a change in the society that you live in today? How are you going to make the world a better place with the platforms that you have? How can you give back to your community and let them know that you appreciate the community? How can I challenge you to go find someone and hear their story? Pack a Ziploc bag with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, some peanut butter crackers, regular cheese crackers, a bottle of water, and give it to a homeless person and say, hey, I'm thinking about you today. Here's some socks. Here's a t-shirt. Here's a jacket, in case it rains, whatever it may be. But how are you thinking about someone today? How are you being that difference in this world? And that's what it is. It's about paying it forward and giving back into this community. Because, again, if you got injured playing the sport that you love playing, and you were in someone's shoes where they were living on the streets and you couldn't afford to pay rent, or you couldn't afford to pay this or that, and someone paid it for you and made a difference in your life, wouldn't it mean the world to you? So why can't we do it for someone else? I'm here to challenge each and every one of you out here today to pay it forward. To pay it forward. to go mentor that next generation and teach them what is right, how to be a man, how to be a woman, how to be respectful of themselves and of others, how to pay it forward, how to make a difference in this world. There used to be a lot of people in this world that actually cared about making a difference. And there are still people out there that care about making a difference and want to see the impact. But it takes an army to make that impact. It takes an army to make a difference. And that's what I want you guys to do, is make a difference. And when we look at life outside of the whistle, life after the whistle, after being famous, after living our glory days on that court, on that field, how can we still make a difference in this community, in this world, right? Because this is a broken world that we live in. Another one of my favorite Bible verses is John 15. I think it's John 15:5 or John 15:6, right? Where it talks about Jesus said that I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me, I in him, he will bear much fruit. That's another one of my favorite verses, is that, for Jaden Ivey in his situation, as he continued to remain true to God and what he believes in, he's praying and he's doing what he's supposed to do. He's bearing that fruit, that, the fruit of the Spirit, and he's remaining in Christ. He's trusting in Christ. I was even reminded of this myself today, is prayer, and that in everything that I do, that I can't do it on my own strength, that it's on the strength of God. And when I pray and when I talk to God, and give him and cast my burdens on him and talk to God, that he's going to hear my prayers. He's going to take on my burdens, and he's going to walk with me side by side. And then in his timing, he will give me answers, clarity. He will deliver me from the burdens that I had cast upon him. And, sometimes it is a struggle. It is a struggle to deny the ways of the world, to pick up my cross daily, and to follow Christ. But I know that's something I need to do. And so I'm passionate about sports ministry. I always wanted to use sports to preach the gospel of Christ. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I have, a sports platform to be able to do so. And so that's kind of where the direction I kind of want to take my sports business some point in my career, is to hold, different camps, ministry camps at different churches, YMCAs, right? Because a lot of people don't know about basketball, that it was started at the YMCA for ministry, for men. And it was a lot that came into it. So it was a peach basket that was on the ground, and they had a soccer ball, and they were throwing like the soccer ball into the peach basket, but it was like 10 people on each side. So like it became really weird, because then you had they came with rules and different things like that. They shortened it down to where it is today, 5 people on the court at a time for each team, the rules that they have or whatnot. And obviously, like, the rules have changed dramatically, because you have the gather step, which now consists of a travel. You have people that are flopping all over and playing soft, or whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, right, we have to do what's best for us. We have to go out there, and we have to make a difference in this community, and figure out what our life's going to look like after we are athletes. We have to look at what our life's going to be like after we're done with the sports world, or even just the corporate world in general. So with that being said, though, guys, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in. I thank you guys for listening to my spiel here. But every Monday and Wednesday, I'm going to be doing Life After the Whistle. And as we continue to progress and we continue to grow, I'll keep adding more days of Life After the Whistle, and kind of just go from there. But tune in tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for Unfiltered Sports on the OG Network. So I really appreciate it, guys. Until next time, you guys stay blessed and have a great night.